Welcome back for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at 3 John.
Oh, that's a fun one.
Yeah. It's a short one, but packed with some interesting stuff. And it's a book that, even if you're not like a super Bible scholar or anything, there's a lot of good stuff about leadership and community and some behind-the-scenes looks at the early church.
Absolutely. And I think what's so fascinating about 3 John is just how it, even though it's from almost 2,000 years ago,
Right.
it still speaks to us today.
Yes.
In really powerful ways.
Yeah.
We get this glimpse into like the challenges that early Christians faced, like navigating power dynamics, how to support people who are going out and spreading this new message, this new way of life.
Yeah. Okay. So to give folks a little bit of context, we're dealing with a letter here.
Right.
It's from a leader, probably the Apostle John, although he refers to himself as just the elder.
The elder, yeah.
To a guy named Gaius. And I'm looking at my notes here, and you gave me some good footnotes. We've got some drama going on. There's a church leader named Diotrephes.
Oh, yeah.
Who seems to be causing trouble, and then there's even a bit of mystery surrounding Gaius himself.
Yeah, totally. Like, we don't get a full bio of Gaius.
Right.
But piecing together what we have, it seems like he was a pretty important figure.
Yeah.
He's commended for his hospitality towards these traveling missionaries, which we can imagine in those days was crucial to spreading, this early Christian message.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that the letter doesn't really spell out, like, why that was so important.
Yeah.
Is it safe to assume these missionaries, like, didn't have a lot of resources? They needed people like Gaius to put them up and give them food and shelter.
Absolutely. I mean, think of it like crowdfunding.
Yeah.
But for faith,
okay,
these missionaries were on the front lines spreading these new beliefs, and they depended on the generosity of people like Gaius to support their mission.
That's really cool. It makes you think about the kind of radical hospitality that might be needed today, even if it's not literally housing missionaries.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Exactly. It begs the question, what does it look like to truly support people who are doing this really important work?
Right.
Even if they're different from us.
Yeah.
Or they challenge our comfort zones.
Exactly.
But before we get too far ahead, there's another detail in here.
Yeah.
It mentions that these missionaries went forth for the sake of the name.
Ah, yes. A name, right.
A name.
So the footnotes that you gave me suggested that this could refer to a few different things.
Yeah.
But most scholars land on that meaning Jesus.
Right, right. I think that's the most likely interpretation.
Okay.
Just given the context.
Yeah.
It makes sense. They were spreading the message of Jesus. And then there's another layer to this that's interesting.
Okay.
It mentions that they weren't accepting anything from the pagans.
So, like, they were being super careful to avoid any appearance of being, like, bought off or influenced by those outside their faith.
Right, precisely. It suggests this real commitment to staying true to their mission, to maintaining their independence. They wanted their message to be clear and uncompromised.
Yeah, it's like they were building a brand even back then, making sure the message wasn't diluted.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, we can't talk about the name without talking about names, right?
Yeah.
Specifically, Diotrephes.
Ah, yes. Diotrephes.
The antagonist of our story, it seems.
Here's the one, right?
He's described as loving to be first.
Loves to be first.
Rejecting the authority of the letter's author. Even hindering those trying to help the missionaries.
Yeah. Pretty intense.
Yeah. It's interesting. My notes here say that some scholars think that he might have had, like, theological reasons.
Oh, interesting.
For opposing those missionaries.
Okay.
It wasn't just a power grab.
Right.
What do you think?
Yeah. It's a valid point. I mean, we don't have Diotrephes' side of the story.
Right.
So it's entirely possible he had genuine concerns about their teachings.
Right.
But the author's clearly using him as like a cautionary tale, right?
Yeah.
This is somebody who's letting pride and ambition get in the way of unity and hospitality.
It makes you wonder how common these kinds of conflicts were in the early church.
I know, right?
And speaking of conflicts, there's another character mentioned, Demetrius.
Yeah, Demetrius. Demetrius is a bit of a mystery. The author commends him to Gaius, praises his good reputation.
Yeah.
But that's about it. That's all we get.
Right.
Was he a missionary? Was he another leader? It's really intriguing to think about what role he might have played.
Yeah, it's like a blink and you'll miss it kind of detail.
Totally.
But those often turn out to be really important.
Exactly. Sometimes it's those little things, those seemingly insignificant details that can really help us understand the bigger picture.
And that's what I love about doing these deep dives with you. It's like we're uncovering these layers that you might miss on a surface reading.
Totally.
Okay, so we have this backdrop of missionaries, drama with Diotrephes, mysterious Demetrius. What else is the author trying to get across to Gaius?
Well, in the midst of all this, there's a really personal moment where the author expresses this desire to see Gaius face to face.
Oh, okay.
So it's not just like a formal letter, right?
Yeah.
It's a genuine expression of like friendship and care.
Yeah, that's really cool. So it's not just like a historical artifact. It's given us insights into how communities function, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We might not be relying on handwritten letters, but that need for authentic connection hasn't gone away, has it?
I don't think so. I think it's more important now than ever.
Right. Yeah, and this need for connection is so important, especially when you consider what the early church was up against.
Right.
They're a minority group.
Yeah.
They're often misunderstood, sometimes persecuted.
Right, absolutely.
So they needed each other, right, for support, encouragement, accountability. It's like, it makes you wonder, who are like the missionaries of today?
Ooh, that's good.
Who are the people that need that kind of radical support and hospitality, the ones on the front lines of important work, but that we might be overlooking?
That's such a powerful question. I think it really challenges us to think beyond our immediate circles, to consider, you know, who might be working tirelessly for these causes that we care about, but they're not getting the recognition or the support that they deserve.
It makes me think about something else you said earlier about the author's kind of subtle but firm stance against these false teachings.
Right.
He doesn't name names, but he's clearly concerned about maintaining the integrity of their beliefs.
Yeah, absolutely. And it speaks to this importance of discernment, which I think is just as relevant today as it was back then.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it.
Right.
We're just bombarded with information from all sides.
All the time.
How do we separate truth from falsehood?
Yeah.
How do we know what to believe?
It feels like we're living in a constant state of information overload.
Yes.
It's exhausting.
I know.
I mean, I feel that even with the sources I sent you for this episode, it was hard to know what to trust.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this emphasis on walking in truth is so powerful.
Right.
Because it's not just about knowing the truth.
Yeah.
It's about living it out.
Right.
In our actions, in our relationships, in our everyday choices.
So it's not enough to just have the right information in our heads. We have to embody it.
Yes.
Let it shape how we interact with the world.
Exactly. And that ties into what he says about not imitating what is bad. And instead imitating what is good.
Yeah.
It's like he's saying, you know, our actions should reflect our values.
Right.
What we believe to be true and good.
And he uses Diotrephes as the perfect example of somebody who's not walking in truth.
Yeah.
He's all about power and control, not about serving others or building up the community.
Right. Diotrephes is the cautionary tale.
Yeah.
He's letting his own ambition get in the way of what's really important, love and unity and service to others.
But then you have somebody like Demetrius, who, even though we don't have a lot of info on him, is held up as like an example of somebody who is living out those values.
Yeah, it's almost like the author's saying, hey, be like Demetrius, not like Diotrephes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about, you know, the impact that we have on the people around us.
Yeah.
Are we more like a Diotrephes, not, you know? Well, that's good.
Creating division and negativity.
Right.
Or are we more like a Demetrius, inspiring others with our integrity and our commitment to what's good?
That is such a powerful question. And I think that is a question that the author of 3 John wants us to wrestle with.
Okay, so we've talked about hospitality, discerning truth, the importance of imitating good. What other key insights can we draw from this letter?
Well, I think it's important to remember that 3 John is not just some, like, you know, theological treatise. It's a personal letter written by a leader who's deeply invested in the well-being of his community.
And you can really feel that personal touch, right?
Absolutely.
In his words.
Yeah.
It's not just laying down the law.
Right.
It's about encouraging and supporting Gaius as he navigates these challenges.
Exactly. And this speaks to the importance of leadership.
Yeah.
That's both strong and compassionate.
The author doesn't shy away from addressing tough issues.
Right.
But he does it with a sense of grace and understanding.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, look, I know things are tough.
Yeah.
But I'm here for you. We're in this together.
Exactly. And that's a powerful model for leaders today, you know?
Yeah.
It's about being able to hold both truth and grace to challenge people while also offering support and encouragement.
So it's not about being a dictator. It's about being a guide.
Yeah.
Somebody who walks alongside others, offers wisdom and direction, but also respects their agency and empowers them to make their own choices.
Precisely. And you see this leadership style in the way he entrusts Gaius with this responsibility of discerning truth and taking action.
Okay.
He doesn't micromanage him.
Right.
He equips him to make wise decisions.
It's like he's saying, I trust you, Gaius.
Yeah.
You got this. Which is a powerful message, not just for leaders, but for anyone who's trying to navigate these complex situations and make a positive difference in the world.
Absolutely. And it ties into this call to action that we find in this letter.
Okay.
To not just be passive observers,
but
to actively participate in building a community that reflects our values.
So it's not enough to just like sit back and complain about the state of the world.
Exactly.
We have to be willing to get our hands dirty, put in the work, stand up for what we believe in, even when it's uncomfortable or unpopular.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
It's all well and good to talk about these principles, but how do we actually apply them in our everyday lives?
Yeah. That's a great question.
Yeah.
And one I'm sure our listeners are eager to explore.
Totally.
So how do we take these kind of abstract ideas and turn them into concrete actions?
Yeah.
How do we actually walk in truth?
Yeah.
In a world that's often so confusing and contradictory?
That's a question that deserves some careful consideration.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to need to dive into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Right.
It's fascinating, right? This desire to meet face to face.
Yeah.
It's not just a personal thing.
Right.
It speaks to a larger point about how early Christians built their community.
Okay.
Remember, this is a time long before social media.
Yeah.
Before widespread literacy even.
Right.
So those personal relationships were the glue that held everything together.
It's so true. So it's not just a historical artifact, this letter.
Right.
It's actually giving us real insights into how communities function, even today.
Absolutely.
We might not be sending letters anymore, but that need for connection is still there.
It hasn't gone away, has it? And I would argue it's even more important now.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Especially when you think about the challenges the early church was facing.
Right.
They were a minority group.
Right.
A lot of times misunderstood, persecuted even.
Right.
They really needed each other for support.
Right. Encouragement to keep each other accountable.
Accountability, yeah, totally.
It makes you wonder, who are the missionaries today?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right. Who are the people that need that kind of support? Yeah. The ones on the front lines doing the hard work, but maybe we're overlooking them.
That's such a powerful question.
Yeah.
It challenges us to think bigger.
Right.
Who's out there doing the work that we care about?
Right.
But they're not getting the support.
Yeah. And the recognition.
The recognition, exactly.
It makes me think about something else you said.
Okay.
The author's kind of subtle but firm stance against false teaching.
Right.
He's not naming names.
Right.
But he's concerned.
He's definitely concerned
about keeping the integrity of their beliefs.
Absolutely. And that speaks to the importance of discernment.
Yeah.
Which I think is so relevant today.
I know.
We are just bombarded with information.
It's crazy.
How do you even know what to believe anymore?
I know. It's like we're living in this constant state of information overload.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
It is.
I feel that even with the sources I sent you for this episode,
totally,
it's hard to know what to trust.
Exactly. And I think that's what's so powerful about this emphasis on walking in truth.
Okay.
It's not just about knowing it.
Right.
It's about living it out.
Right.
In your actions, your relationships, everyday choices.
So it's not enough to just have the right information. You have to embody it.
You got to live it.
Let it affect how you interact with the world.
Exactly. And that ties into what he says about not imitating what is bad, but imitating what is good.
Right.
He's saying our actions should reflect what we believe, what we value.
And he uses Diotrephes.
Oh, totally. As a perfect example of what not to do.
Yeah.
Right? The guy's all about power and control, not serving others, not building up the community.
Right. Diotrephes is the classic cautionary tale.
Yeah.
He's letting ambition get in the way of what matters.
Right. The love, the unity.
Love, unity, service to others, yeah.
But then you have Diotrephes, who we don't know a lot about him.
Right.
But he's presented as this example of somebody who is living out those values.
It's like he's saying, hey, be like Diotrephes.
Exactly.
Not like Diotrephes.
And it makes me think, what about us?
Yeah.
What kind of impact are we having?
Ooh, that's good.
Are we more like Diotrephes?
Right.
Creating division and negativity?
Yeah.
Or are we more like Diotrephes?
Right.
Inspiring others with our integrity and our commitment to good?
That's such a powerful question.
Yeah.
And I think it's the author of 3 John really wants us to wrestle with. So we've covered some really interesting stuff, from that radical hospitality to figuring out how to discern truth in this crazy world of information overload. But for me, the real challenge is figuring out how to apply these principles to our modern lives.
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? And I think what's so cool about 3 John is it's not just abstract concepts.
Right.
It shows us what these principles look like in action.
Right.
We see Gaius opening up his home to these strangers, supporting their mission, even though it probably felt risky.
Right.
That's a tangible example of radical hospitality.
Right. It's not just theory. He actually did it.
And he did it.
And it makes me think about, what are the small ways that we can be more welcoming and inclusive in our own lives?
Yeah.
Maybe it's inviting a new coworker to lunch, or checking in on that elderly neighbor, or just being more intentional about listening to people who have different views than us.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be this grand gesture.
Right.
Sometimes those small, quiet, consistent efforts are the most meaningful.
Okay, that makes sense.
You know,
and what about discerning truth?
Yeah, right.
It's like we're constantly bombarded.
I know, it's so hard.
Especially online.
Right.
With conflicting information.
Yeah.
How do we even sift through all the noise?
Well, I don't think the author gives us like a step-by-step guide.
Right.
But he does emphasize the importance of careful observation and evaluation.
Okay.
He says to test the spirits.
Right.
To really figure out if those who claim to be speaking for God are actually aligned with truth.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah.
It's like we're all detectives trying to gather evidence, cross-reference information, make informed judgments.
Yeah.
But it's tough, you know?
It is, especially with algorithms.
Yeah.
And echo chambers.
Right. They're just confirming our biases.
Yeah, and that's where humility is so important.
Okay.
Recognizing that we don't have all the answers, that we're susceptible to being misled and being open to correcting our course when we get new information.
So it's not just about being smart or well-informed.
Yeah.
It's about having the right attitude, being willing to learn and grow and admit when you're wrong.
Totally. And that's where community can be so helpful.
Oh, okay.
Just like the author of 3 John relied on Gaius and others to support those missionaries and counter the false teachings.
Right.
We can lean on our communities too.
Yeah.
You know, the people we trust and respect.
It's a good reminder that we're not alone.
Right.
We can share information.
Yeah.
Challenge each other's assumptions.
Hold each other accountable.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
And that brings us to that last principle. Maybe the most challenging one, standing up for what's right.
Right.
Even when it's hard.
We see that in the way the author condemns Diotrephes.
Yeah, totally.
Who's not only rejecting the missionaries, but trying to silence anyone who supports them.
It would have been so much easier to just ignore Diotrephes.
Right.
You know, avoid the conflict.
Yeah.
But he chooses to speak out.
Yeah.
Challenge his behavior.
Right.
Defend those who are being mistreated.
And that takes courage.
It does.
It's easy to stay silent when we see injustice or falsehood.
Especially when it's the people in power.
Right.
So we're promoting it.
But 3 John reminds us that we have this responsibility to speak truth to power.
Totally.
To advocate for those who are marginalized.
Yeah.
And to work toward a more just, equitable world.
So it's not just about being nice and hospitable. You got to have a backbone.
Yeah.
Be willing to stand up for what you believe in, even when it costs you something.
And that's the legacy of 3 John, right?
Yeah, I think so.
It's a call to action, an invitation to be more than just passive consumers of information.
It's a challenge to be active in shaping our communities, the world around us.
And to be beacons of hospitality and truth and justice, even when things are tough.
And, I think these principles, they're not just for Christians or people of faith. They're universal values that resonate with anybody who's trying to live a meaningful, ethical life.
Whether we're talking about welcoming refugees, fighting for social justice, or just standing up to a bully on the playground.
The principles of 3 John are timeless to give us this guide for navigating these complexities.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into 3 John, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. What small step can you take today, no matter how insignificant it seems, to embody those principles of hospitality and truth and justice?
It's a good question. It's one worth pondering. One that I hope will stay with you.
Well, thanks for joining us on this journey.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.